Welcome, everyone. I'm Ann Evans, a leadership group member with Ashoka. Great to have you with us all today. So I want to welcome you to our session called What's Love Got to Do with It? It's about healing the world with faith-inspired changemaking. So since 2017, Ashoka has been engaged with faith-inspired changemakers. And through this last year, we ran a masterclass and lab and working with over 70 faith-inspired changemakers from across 22 countries and 10 different faith traditions. So why is this a focus for Ashoka? Well, because we believe that change-making is love and respect put into action for the good of everyone. And of course, love is the foundational principle for all of the faiths around the world. While the faith communities are in turmoil today, we recognize that faith and spirituality remain a key part of the identity of a vast majority of people around the world. And so we want to recognize that and realize that there are faith communities and institutions that, like every organization across the world, really need change making because they are facing a time of unprecedented change. And information that is shared so widely that transactional ways of doing and lack of transparency no longer work. Hierarchy doesn't make as much sense to anyone anymore, and as a result, people are leaving faith communities in droves. So we know that this is an exciting time for faith, although it's a very scary time for faith. And so we also recognize that there's an exciting group of change makers out there who are coming up with wonderful ideas to meet the various challenges that these vast changes imply. We have spiritual innovators, people who are creating new ways of being spiritual and who are finding new ways of building community. We also have social entrepreneurs who are led by their faith to do the kind of work that they're doing that's healing the world. And we have institutional entrepreneurs who are working with institutional leaders to find the new paths of leadership that work in a time of rapid change. And we want to introduce them to you, some of them to you here today. So first, I would like to share with you an introduction of Meena Palaniappan. Meena is an Ashoka Fellow elected in 2021. She's the founder of the most innovative and award-winning platform called Atma Connect, which has created and launched an innovative platform enabling people in vulnerable communities to collaborate for disaster resilience and to become change makers. Atma Go is a social network for neighbors helping neighbors and has reached over 7 million people in Indonesia and Puerto Rico who share real-time information and solutions to be able to prepare for disasters, to advocate for better government, to prevent the next disaster by creating more resiliency in their communities. And she's now engaging with faith communities to address climate issues through joint action. Spencer Burke is a pastor and serial entrepreneur. Spencer is a speaker, a coach, a trainer, and a strategist in the field of spiritual innovation. As director of Lean Faith, his latest initiative, he helps spiritual communities discover the right questions to minimize risk and test their ideas through rapid iterations. He's also the founder of Hatchery in LA, an incubator for spiritual entrepreneurs, as well as the creator of The Ooze, the original website and magazine for progressive Christianity. And Spencer has authored several books, including A Heretic's Guide to Eternity and Making Sense of Church, and has been thinking a long time about innovation in the context of faith. Also with us, we're happy to have Stephen Lewis, who is president of the Forum for Theological Exploration and founder of Do Good X. Both of these organizations are working with innovators led by their faith and creating new opportunities for being faithful in a wide variety of ways. And Spencer also is the author of a wonderful new book coming out, along with his colleague, Kimberly Daniels, called A Way to, oh man, let me get that title correct, and we'll put it in the chat for you. I think I don't have it on the tip of my tongue, but we'll put the title of his new book in the chat for you so that you all can keep an eye out for that. It's coming out soon. So thank you all for serving. I want to also introduce my wonderful colleague from our faith team, Mentor Dita. Mentor, thank you for facilitating. Mentor is himself an entrepreneur and a movement builder. And welcome to you all, and thanks so much. Over to you, Mentor.
Thank you so much, Anne, and welcome everybody. This group of people that is here, it's a lifetime, not even a book will capture their depth. And I'm sure Stephen is doing his best to ensure that the book has the right depths, but they all have so much depth for us to share. And that's what we're going to dive right into this. Okay, so we want to start with first touching on this question: what does faith mean to you? Okay, we're going to start with this, and I know this is also a big question, so try to limit it to one sentence and let's see what comes up. Okay, so we're going to start with Meena first, then go to Spencer, then finish with Stephen. So Meena, what does faith mean to you?
Thank you. In one sentence, faith means to me that there's something more than this small self, this ego, and Newtonian physics.
Wow. Let's let that sink in a little bit, everybody, right? There's more than Isaac Newton. Fantastic. Thank you, Meena. Spencer?
Yeah, I would use kind of the biblical passage on the idea of faith is really this hope of things unseen. But also I'd add to the tack of it is that faith without some kind of action is dead. And so it's the actions that you take to make that hope become a reality.
Mm-hmm. I would invite everybody to take a deep breath and just soak these in. Stephen, we go to you.
In short, can you hear me?
Yes.
In short, I would say that faith is fidelity or a commitment to the animating life force in all things, humanity, or even the relational universe that we know. It's known by many names, but it connects and reconnects us to the profound unity and sacredness of life that's deep within us, between us, transcend us, and guides us, if not conspires with us, to work on behalf of shaping a more hopeful future.
I felt the force as you were sharing. That was beautiful. Thank you, And then let's continue with you here. So we are right now, definitely can all agree that we live in a world where we have more problems than solutions, right? I think the audience agrees, us here agree, and we're getting to see that there is this drive, this change-making desire that is coming into people's life, and it's becoming more and more important. And the question for you, Stephen, is how do you see this connection between this change-making and faith? Like I heard even in your description of what faith means to you, they were very intertwined. So can you bring some light onto what that means for you?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say about faith or spirituality is that it's ultimately concerned with our relationship to the sacred, each other, and the environment. It's about what it means to be human and humane to almost the 8 billion neighbors occupying this world with us. It's about being a better steward of the land and the environment that we've inherited on behalf of future generations. And so for is about reckoning with the unjust and inequitable inheritance or acquisition of privilege and power to maintain and sustain us and our way of life by any means necessary at the expense of the environment and the well-being of the majority brown populated world. It's also about repairing the breach of our humanity, our dignity, entangled mutuality and a sense of belonging, well-being and flourishing, the love and the trust between us, that which is sacred in life, the environment, and our social interactions. So for me then, change making that reckons and repairs and revolutionizes our way of life, especially on behalf of and in partnership with the majority brown world, are concerned with these things, whether or not it's dressed up in the language of faith or not.
Wow. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We will also invite the audience. If you have questions, please, let us in. And just to remind you that you will have the opportunity to engage with all of our panelists once this segment is over. Thank you, Stephen, for that. And just to build on that, there's this, Mina, I want to come to you. You were talking also in your description of faith of what there's something beyond the materialistic, and that to me also means unity, right? There's some sort of unity among all people and everything, and how do you how do we fight this us and them type of mentality? If we are how can change making, for example, be that bridge so that there's no divide across pace or across political spectrum or nationalities, or how can we work on this dilemma of us and them? And also Stephen mentioned that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think that there are those those visions out there of a better world. People are living it. What we've seen on our platform, the Neighbors Helping Neighbors platform, is people want to help one another. They want to make their communities and the world better by the work they do. Our work at Atma is inspired by this Indonesian term, gotong royong, which is mutual support. And, I think that we fundamentally have to accept and celebrate the fact that humans are born with an innate desire to help one another and each other. This economist, Samuel Bowles, says, in the past 20 years, we've discovered that people all around the world are a lot more moral and a lot less selfish than economists and evolutionary biologists had previously assumed, that our moral commitments are surprisingly similar to reciprocity, fairness, and helping people in need. Fundamentally, whether as faith communities or the global community at large, we are far more alike than we are different. What we've seen just over the past, decade or so is technology and technology platforms that have become ubiquitous have sown divisiveness, disconnection, conflict. But technology should be a tool, just a tool for the world that we want, a more connected, kinder, more equitable world. And the technology that we are building here and that others are building all over the world can be that solution, where we're building social cohesion and community resilience. So this is, I think, the potential to unlock more of what is good in humanity. Darren Kagan, a journalist, once said, bad things do happen in the world, but out of those situations always arise stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I think that is the potential that we want to unleash.
Mm-hmm. So beautifully said, Mina, and even, reminds me of how, everybody wants to help. Like there's no baby is born racist or being born like hateful, wants to harm others. Usually, even science tells us that babies gravitate more towards smiles, towards altruistic type of way of things, and it is pretty sad that these things that are dividing us are learned and not inherent, right? And that's the us versus them. It's very interesting. So we're learning things. So in a way, we have to go on a process to unlearn. Is also what I'm hearing. We have to unlearn to go to that place. And Spencer, coming to you, why is, if somebody wants to help, if somebody wants to create a change in the world, how can faith help them? How can they tap into faith? What are the benefits of faith for change makers? Because we're hearing from both the speakers before, there is this thread that we have inherently in us that when we tap into, something gets unleashed. I'd love to hear more of your thoughts and perspectives on that.
Yeah, well, I feel like it kind of the evolution of the entrepreneur. You could take that. There were entrepreneurs that made things more effective and efficient. Then Ashoka came and really rediscovered the idea that entrepreneurism wasn't enough. We really had to think about social entrepreneurism. How do we right the wrongs of the world? Well, I've found in the last 7 years or 10 years, there's been this new emerging discipline that I think in the same way Ashoka saw it emerging 40 years ago, that there is a need for spiritual entrepreneurism or spiritual innovation. And I don't think that this is just an evangelistic kind of thing. I think it really, or a church thing or a spiritual thing. I think there are actually innovators who are sensing this desire to go deeper, not just right the wrongs. You know what I mean? There's a sense that every entrepreneur goes, I have a spiritual side. I have a faith initiative side to who I am. And they're exploring that. And it's in those conversations that I'm finding people saying, wow, I would love for my faith to be part of the component of my innovation. And in the world, the past, it's really been kind of said, no, there's a definite separation between the things of faith and the things of entrepreneurism or social entrepreneurism. So there's this new emerging thing. And I think the definition or difference for me, this is just the way I'm playing with it, the way in which it's different between a social entrepreneur and a spiritual entrepreneur is what I would call humane spirituality. And this is probably the benefit, I'd hope, is that the way I loosely define humane spirituality right now is restoring human dignity for both the oppressed and the oppressor. So there are two sides to the element. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you just make it effective, efficient. Sometimes as a social entrepreneur, you can use the same tactics and tools to bully people into getting justice. Where what I'm saying is, on a spiritual level, you have to do your own work and ask, what is it that I am contributing to in this injustice? What work do I need to do deep within my own spirit and understand how I am creating the injustice here? And that's the powerful part, I think, where an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur can stop and say, what's the spiritual angle for me? Whether they're part of a spiritual community or not, I think it's something we're all grappling with.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Mina, I'd love to come to you. You are a social entrepreneur. You are creating change, working with communities. And I'm curious. I'm very curious, and to just build upon what Spencer shared. You as a social entrepreneur, how is faith important in your life, in the work that you're doing? You know, whether it is to mobilize those communities to respond, or whether for you or people like you to find this motivation to find the strength to do the things that are hard to do but so necessary.
Yeah, that's it's a great question, and I think that it is not easy being a social entrepreneur, and the burdens of the world seem far larger than what we can fit on our shoulders. And recently, I've been talking to social entrepreneurs that have built amazing things and who've now considered as their next step going to divinity school, which I think is a really interesting thing that I'm seeing out there more and more. And for me, it's been a relief, I think, to have this faith that there's something larger at work here, to be aware of that and know that this is not mine, neither the massiveness of the problem or the brilliance needed to face these problems, and that really it's about collective action, collective awakening, collective rising to the challenges that we face. And one of the things that I'm really excited about how this all comes together is part of what we've been building at Atma is, seeing all of this energy at the bottom, people helping each other. We've now created this way for people to track the impact of the work they're doing on the ground. And the next step is to really build, and we're talking with interfaith communities to do this, build a collective climate action platform, and that's something that I think can be tremendously transformative in rising to this tremendous existential threat for all life on Earth. A place that many faith communities care for deeply, and I think what's the huge opportunity here is that 85% of the world's population says that they belong to a faith, and in the U.S., 5% of people say they're environmentalists, and so there's this tremendous opportunity to engage communities of faith in the biggest challenge of this moment. We're currently stuck in a cycle of just not doing enough to rise to this challenge. There's hopelessness and despair. What can I do? Is it making a difference? What's exciting about this is the ability for people to be able to engage their faith communities in taking easy, measurable climate actions, like eating one less meal with meat a week, having that be quantified, documented, aggregated by each faith community, across faith communities, in this place where people can see how they're moving the needle, they're making a difference, that they are fundamentally connected and belonging to this global fabric. And I think it's just the sort of first amazing sense that together we can do this, and together we can face these massive existential threats. So it's exciting.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And it's a great reminder of how, faith is spread all over. It is, there's so much influence, but yet, we're also wondering, because it's, and Stephen, I'll come to you for this, and we're getting a question from the audience that ties with this. But how is the faith communities dealing with this change? Because we're seeing today's world is changing really fast. And how are the structures? How are the faith institutions standing or dealing with this situation? And the question from our audience that ties to this is the question comes from the Shafan Khan the Great. He is asking the faith-based communities, can they be spaces for people to go and find other change makers and find the funding to be change makers, find communities to be change makers? Why aren't churches and mosques and temples places where change makers go to connect and find their power to create change?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say is this, is that I can't speak for all faith structures. And, I would also say that, I'm not a representative of all, but what I would say is that not nearly as many structures or faith leaders are responding fast enough. But there are examples where people are, trying to do that work. And I think, to your, to the question that was asked about why not more of these entities doing this type of work. I mean, by definition, orientation, faith structures typically are about preserving the great wisdom traditions, and they tend to be slower responders to change. But there are more that are navigating kind of the gale force winds of change and adapting and innovating and envisioning and also futuring what can be. But I would say what's exciting are those that are not as tied to the traditional structures or the bricks and mortars of churches and mosques, but finding ways in which their faith is more mobile, whether that's in online communities and contexts and ways in which people are organizing, mobilizing their resources to kind of do this type of work. I do think that faith structures and entities can or are creating spaces, but it may not be in the traditional ways in which you think. And so, it may not be coming into the mosque, or it may be not coming into the temple or the church as a literal place. But, I find leaders who have communities and are birthing communities in online spaces, in other kind of a space, or let me say faith adjacent places, where folks are hooking up and planning, strategizing, mobilizing, organizing the ways in which they can actually make a more impactful ways. And so part of it is about, where is this work already happening? And to what extent are they adjacent to faith communities and or leaders that are doing this type of work? But that's what I would say is what I see happening on the ground. And so the other thing that I would say too is that not all faith leaders and structures self-identify or recognize as, as such a structure. I mean, think about what, Mina as a social entrepreneur is doing in her context. It's not, I don't think that, it present itself as a faith structure, but it is creating this type of global platform, connecting and mobilizing other kinds of entrepreneurs. And there are all kinds of examples like that in the US and Europe in Asia and abroad. And so I think it really is trying to find the ways in which these leaders are part of larger communities and steward them in different places that may not be the traditional places where you might think that is happening or not happening.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Very well said. And I totally resonate. And one thing that I admire about you is that, yes, you could have focus of what's going wrong, but you focused on what's going right. And I think that's actually very beautiful. Very beautiful that they are examples. And it's fascinating what you said about preserving the old and dealing with the new. There is some sort of dynamic there that needs to be explored on, how does one make a decision if something of the old is not serving in the now, like those type of dynamics. And it's fascinating to hear that. And I'd love to jump to Spencer because, Spencer, Stephen mentioned that the individuals inside have some of them have this ability to adjust to outside structures, to organize, to make the church, the temple, the mosque a sacred place for change making as well. But it might not look traditionally how it looks like. But how do we build this capacity of these spiritual innovators to help communities of faith make their shift so that they can adjust to this fast changing world and they can hold faith as a force of strength to create change? How do we build that capacity?
Yeah, well, like Steve was saying, that institutions, tend to keep themselves alive and they do whatever they can. Religious institutions have always built themselves kind of on a surety. I understand, I know where we're at. And so I would say, first off, we can embrace some different values. Curiosity is a key value. Empathy is another key value. These are not normal kinds of experiences for people in faith. And so first, I think there's a whole different mind shift, a different way of seeing the world as something to explore and enjoy and look at, rather than something to proselytize or evangelize or overcome. I think of the idea that maybe our spiritual work is more of a gardener than a warrior. And I'm hoping that some of the spiritual metaphors can start to shift for us. The other thing is, I love what Mino was saying, is that we need some new measurements. Right now, and I playfully say this, is that churches have this sense of, and again, I'm coming from my context, but I think it's true about other faith contexts, and that is that we tend to say how many butts are in the pews, how many bucks are in the plates, and then how many buildings do we have on our property. And if you get all three of those right, you get the fourth bonus B, and that is you get to write a book about it. That's what the spiritual world's measurements have been all about. And so the question is, what are the new measurements? What are the things that we can start to think about as new and different? And so I love that Mino's talking about, there are some simple things that we can learn from other organizations and begin to integrate them into our spiritual spaces, like how much meat do we eat this week or whatever. I think one of the places that we can also start is the church, at least, has always been about how much money is flowing into the church. And that's been a measurement. But what if we flip that and said, how much money is flowing out of the church into the people's hands in our community to create new and innovative ways that will have new measurements rather than the old measurements of butts, bucks, and buildings kind of a thing. So that's what I'm hoping for, is that we can find new ways of being able to measure what it means to be kind of a spiritual innovator, a faith change maker in the world.
So much to say to that. I'd love to, I have more questions, but if you have anything to respond for Mina and Stefan regarding this field of how do we respond, what can the new metrics be, especially in this world of fast change. How does success look like for a faith institution? Is it just how many people are coming in and just once a week for an hour and then goodbye, I'm gonna go work for companies that destroy the planet. How would it, what does the new success for you all mean?
I love what Spencer was saying. Everything was, it's so amazing because it's true. What we measure matters. What we measure is what we focus on, and what we measure grows. And so we need to focus our measurement on the things that really matter. That it's, more people that have food on their plates, that more trees, less carbon. So we need to get the measurements right and actually drive our communities and our focus and our attention and our resources to making that happen. And I think that it's a huge opportunity. And I think that it's about also engaging youth. I know, Anne sort of mentioned at the beginning that there are changing dynamics in faith communities, and the faith communities that we've been talking to are curious about how is it that we get a new generation engaged in our communities. And I think that is through the things that, youth are on the streets protesting about right now. We need to bring those issues that are close to the next generation's heart and turn our faith communities to creating real change on those issues, and to have people really be able to see what those changes are. And so I'm really excited about that opportunity.
Thank you, Mina. Stefan, to add anything? Yep.
Yeah, I would just offer that, if you look at the mosque, if you look at the temple, if you look at the church, those are all microcosms of the world. The vast majority of people do not live their lives inside of these institutions. And so when you talk about the majority of the world's population, somewhere in the ballpark of 80% are religious or people of faith. Most of them are living their lives within the broader context of life, in organizations and other places, et cetera, et cetera. And so, the bigger thing for me in terms of measurement is how do we get more of these kinds of leaders that are motivated by different values of whether it be, justice and generosity and purpose and courage and those types of things, mutuality in the corporate boardrooms, within strategy sessions, within venture philanthropy, within venture capitalist organizations, within folks who are doing startup accelerators, within educational systems, et cetera. How do you get the microcosm that lives their lives beyond the bricks and mortars of temples, mosques, and churches, in the highways and byways of where life is happening, where deals are being making in powers of government, to be able to shape the conversation differently, to think about the kinds of moral and ethical kinds of resources that we have to bring to bear to the conversation, but also in our policy making, that helps us address the types of structural kind of inequity that minimizes or mitigates human flourishing, well-being within communities, environments that will be vital and have vitality for the next generation, and that is about the healing of the larger world. When we can get people of faith to recognize that within themselves, they have the cure, to be the medicine within their institutions, within their communities, within their places where they socialize, mobilize, organize on behalf of what they call work, then we might be able to see a different balance of the ways in which institutions operate and enact themselves within the larger world in which they find themselves. And so those are the kinds of measurements that I want to see, measurements that look at how well does an organization, when they carry out their work, contribute to the flourishing of people. that contribute to the well-being of communities, that contribute to the healing of our environment, of our relationships, and our relationships to the environment and to each other, and the ways in which we utilize our money, not for our own self interests, but for the mutuality and the benefit of others. Like if we could just think about those three things and the ways in which we can organize and mobilize that in our strategies and our visions and our organizations and the ways in which we invest our resources, then I think, we could actually, really turn the world upside down and make it a better place.
What I'm hearing that is just so heartwarming and beautiful is that it doesn't have to be inside, also inside the church, inside the mosque. It is inside of us and in society. So these are the two components that I'm hearing that need some re-engineering, so to say. And I have a question here from Anna Aviles, and I think this touches more, since we mentioned a little bit the youth and the way the trends are going. We know, young people today are more likely to identify as spiritual rather than religious, for instance, which is an interesting term, and I think that comes from this picture that people have of what it means to be religious. There's all the movies and all the books and the news that you hear. It's, oh my goodness, you just go there and you're just dogmatized, to death. That's what people think. And also then there's this fear of like, yeah, I identify as spiritual, but not publicly, because spiritual, I'm not also a hippie, I don't want to, that doesn't mean I'm doing drugs and all these things. I am, and they keep it to themselves. And Anna's question is, have you found that it's also hard for people to come out as faith-driven change makers, and also do you find that for youth is this more difficult? And I'll put this question to whoever in the group feels drawn to answer.
I'm gonna I start here because I do feel like this is a little bit of a coming out for me because I never imagined myself to be on a faith-inspired change-making panel. And it was really, I was having conversations with Anne, and she said, what percentage of your work would you say is inspired by faith? And, it was 95%, but it's not something I'm really public about. So I think it is, kind of a reckoning and an opportunity to redefine what faith means and to, and spirituality, and sort of to make it bigger. It's, and I'm, and meeting Stephen and Spencer during this process has been so inspiring, because I do see that there is this incredible community that is emerging, and it's exciting. And I hope that, for youth that are feeling so overwhelmed by the problems that we have, that this provides a surfboard through the chaos, both faith that everything is going to be okay. We are going to fix this, and we're going to regenerate the earth and make it more just and equitable. Faith and change making. I think is an incredible opportunity there to give people hope.
I would say from my perspective, like, again, moving from the entrepreneur to social entrepreneur to spiritual entrepreneur, I don't think it's just in church or mosque or temple. I think it is people desiring to utilize their own faith, their spirituality, their sense. And so I playfully say that we need more heretics, right? And a heretic is someone who's inside the system. Realize that in religious systems, someone who's inside can be the heretic. Someone who's outside is the pagan, right? So just take that as the metaphor, that I think we need more people who are willing to take that chance to be called a heretic in business because of their faith, right? and for many people who are in the faith community, because they're using business ideas like change making, that they'll be called a heretic in the spiritual world. You see, so I think both have a lot to gain and a lot to lose if we don't encourage and engage this. Ultimately, every orthodoxy starts out as a heresy, but not every heresy becomes an orthodoxy. Do you see? So it takes people who are intrapreneurs, people who are inside the system, let's say in a church, and they say, we need to let the youth lead. Well, that's heretical because it's elder rule. You know what I mean? Like there's all these other ways in which well, how about somebody in a business where they say, we need to be more conscious of the earth. You know what I mean? We need to be more conscious of how we are creating profit, you know, and that's a heretic inside the business world because of their faith that draws them to a deeper place. So we need those people on the edge, on the fringe, willing to push the envelope to the point where not all of them, not all the ideas will work, but at some point, some of them will work. And again, that's risky both in the spiritual world, like churches and mosques and synagogues, but I think it's also very risky in the business world to say that literally it's something deeper than just the business principles that push me forward. It's my spiritual journey that encourages me to think this way in the business world.
Thank you, Spencer. We have 2 minutes left. Stephen, I'd love to pass it to you to take us home with your perspective of if somebody is in the audience here and is looking for a reason to come out as a spiritual entrepreneur, okay, what would you say to them?
I would say that that's great, because if you don't, you are leaving a vital, important part of who you are at home, in the closet, and or you're leaving your superpower. Every day when you think about, you know, whether you're a Justice League or you're a Marvel Universe or a multiverse type of person or whatever, I mean, for those who are in that kind of storyline, these superheroes are ordinary people who do extraordinary things because they bring their superpower with them every day to the work that they're engaged in. And in many ways, faith is that. And so, you know, with the young adults that I work with, they want their faith to matter. They want to know that, you know, that the values that they hold, that what keeps motivating them to be dogged, determined, that what enables them to be resilient in the face of no, is not based on their own kind of individual kind of rugged individualism, but it's because of some deeper sources, some deeper wells in which they can draw from that answers the bigger questions: who am I? What are my gifts? And what's my medicine in the world? And so I think, you know, in that ways, faith is a superpower that you want to take with you every day in the work that you're doing within the world. And you shouldn't be embarrassed about it. I'm not talking about being a zealot, but what I am asking people to think about, you can either be a purveyor of the status quo that's not working for everybody, or you can be a fugitive to business as normal in the status quo. And I'm looking for folks who want to be fugitive kinds of entrepreneurs and innovators that are saying that, you know, we have to create alternative ways to be in the world that are more life-giving, that are more humane, that are more healing and contributed to what this world can be, and not get stuck in the world as it is, or the world that has done me wrong, or the world that will never be what it could be. If we always have that type of thinking, then we will never be able to structure what it is that we ultimately need. And so it reminds me again of what this guy Buckminster Fuller says: you can never change a thing by fighting against the existing reality. To change something, build new models. and make the old one obsolete. I want the kinds of entrepreneurs. I want the kinds of faith entrepreneurs. I want the kind of change makers that Ashoka is interested in supporting, cultivating, and helping to envision. The folks who are actually going to change the reality, this existing reality, the status quo, and make it obsolete by building new models, new structures, new ways of relaying, new ways of reimagining our own kind of the way that we participate in the economy that is more life-giving, that is more self-sustaining, and that is more contributed to what it means to be a part of a beloved community of a world of almost 8 billion neighbors.
Stephen, I think everybody needed to hear that. I'm seeing a lot of smiles, but I'm also feeling the unity of everybody just increased in frequency from your answer. So thank you so much, and thank you to everybody. We invite you to join our Zoom session. To continue, you can have a conversation with these folks. Hey, are you listening? You have this opportunity. So join the Zoom group, and the session was called "What Love Got to Do with This?" And love is our superpower. This is what we're learning. It's our superpower. Faith, spirituality, based, rooted in love. It's our superpower, and we need to tap into that now more than ever, I have to say. Okay, so let's join the Zoom breakout group. Thank you so much, everybody, for your participation, and we'll see you at the discussion.